just want to start by saying, this is such a special, short. Absolutely loved it. I loved how, it set up that idea, that theme of, connecting and bonding with family, over a show or a movie or, sports. For you both, are there any particular shows or movies that are special to you that you bonded over with your family?
Courtney?
I feel like you should go first. I have my children are currently 4 and 6. So there's a lot of things that I'm very, very excited to bond with them over. Once they get just a little bit older, I feel like the bonding right now has been younger shows that I don't know. I have many, many hopes and dreams for future things to start to just introduce them to and share them to that were so pivotal in my childhood.
Yeah, Wild Bunch,
Poltergeist. Oh yeah, definitely.
13th, all the classics. Kids at 11 years old should watch these movies. It's going to help their brain function, I promise. Thomas, I'll tell you this, my family, it spans all kinds of different things. My wife does not like animation, doesn't really care for movies, except unless they star Jason Momoa, maybe. My kids, I have to find shows, right? Because I like to bond, and I feel like I found that TV shows, sports, finding avenues to bond with your kids, especially my kids are older, they're all out of high school. I have to find stuff to watch with them, like I don't, and stuff I might even necessarily like I love watching I don't know, Big Brother or something, like some sort of show like that. And my daughter loves that, so I'll sit and watch that with her. My sons love anime, and so they're like, hey, you watch this show Tokyo Revengers? I'm like, oh, I didn't. So I'll sit and watch with them. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. But for me, what I find with them is just more about finding what they're into, so I can watch that and just be up on, just be kind of have something with them. You know what I mean? So I hear stories of people going like, oh my goodness, I showed my kids Miyazaki's Totoro this weekend. It blew their brain, and I was like, wow, I'm not that thought out. I'm not that thought out for my kids and planning out their film. I think I got demoralized when my sons were little, and I bought them, I was doing some plein air painting, and I bought them little easels because they were super into it. And as soon as I bought them easels, and as soon as I set them up, so we all set up to paint, I start painting, and they look at me and they're like, I can't do that. They basically put their stuff down and walked out and wouldn't start playing in the backyard. I think that broke my spirits to really try and instill anything else in them that I loved.
I could imagine you frantically YouTubing all these different shows to try and educate yourself and try and get in. And I suppose obviously with Jason Momoa, you could maybe approach him, get favor in that respect.
One day, I can only hope I get to that status.
That could work. For you, Louis, when did the journey begin? For Nona.
Well, truthfully, it began probably about a year before we started, and the way it started was, I had a couple executives kind of go like, hey, we think you'd be a good candidate for the Spark program. What do you think? And I basically I was in that part of my career where I didn't know where I wanted to go. Was I going to just settle into being a story artist, or do I still want to tell my own stories, which I had been working on? But I felt like I gotten older, so it was like this thing where I felt like I wasn't sure. And so when they offered me this, I was kind of like, I wasn't really sure, because I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know if I wanted to leave animation to do comics. I didn't know what I wanted, do that live action. So when they asked me, I was really confused. But then a friend hit me up and was like, just kind of like she basically just talked straight to me and was like, what's your problem? And I said, you know what? She laid it out, and I was like, you know what? You're making a lot of sense, but I don't understand why I'm saying no. Let me think on it. And I swear to you, that night, it was like crystal clear. I was like, oh no, you're afraid to do this. You don't want to do this in front of it's basically like performing in front of your family. Like, I can perform in front of, strangers. Who cares? Right. But in front of your family, they're going to make fun of you for the rest of your life. So it has to be good. So there's a certain pressure, but I find that, in my career, it's always been my thing to go, if it's scary, if no one else wants to do it, I'll do it, because I take pride in everything I do. And I feel like there's something to be learned about everything you do. So the journey for Nona began that year. I said no. And when I finally realized about 8 months later that I wanted to do it, that I should do it, it was like, yes. And then I'm getting a call from Courtney, who's like, hey, so I'm thinking about trying to be your producer. I'm like, wait, who's this? and things just started running in a great way, where it was just surprises, trying to figure out story, and things were trying to move forward, momentum. And it was great. Once I said yes, I felt like that's when it was on and popping.
And how much did the idea, change or evolve, through that whole process?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because it changed a lot, but didn't really change at all. So that doesn't really answer your question. But Courtney, I want you to expand on this too, because how it started, the three characters are always there. The idea that was there in the beginning was always there. So the journey wasn't to find the idea, find the story, because we knew the story is about a grandmother and a granddaughter. The granddaughter is full of energy, so it distracts the grandma, so she misses her wrestling, and then something happens and conflict, and then they have to make up, right? So that's the story. Simple character piece. But what really matters in a simple story is the emotional weight and how you portray, get entertainment and all that, right? You have to really feel the action reaction. So that part changed a ton, right? Finding that emotional, core for Nona, so that as an audience, we can understand why she's ignoring her granddaughter a little bit. That emotional journey is what really was the big one, right? Because you kind of ride it and you go like, okay, this is better than it was, but it's still not good. Better than it was, but still not good. Until finally, you hit these peaks and valleys and you go, boom, this works. This work. Everyone's feeling it. No one's saying anything. No one's giving notes. Everyone's just smiling, half smiling and looking at each other. I think we got something here. And that's when it was like, let's make this thing. Let's stop story. We're done. Make it now.
For you, Courtney, what were your initial thoughts on the idea and, how it shaped over the process, the project?
It was a fun idea. It was a very big idea. So trying to also figure out how to actually make it work. But I think that it was a relatable story that was the grandma and the granddaughter. And I think the challenge of how those two worlds kind of combined, I think that also went through a lot of evolution. And I'm trying to remember what it was in the beginning. And I think you can kind of see the areas that you feel like might grow the most. And I think watching those progress throughout the production and kind of where they ended up was such a fun journey to go on, of going too far and then pulling it back too far and then finding what is actually the right amount. And then adding more depth to the story. Kind of Louis kind of touched on that, of Nona, she wasn't always likable in some of the early iterations of the story. And so you continue to refine that character and you continue to add depth to give something more to her of why she would be ignoring her granddaughter, so that you can relate to that and you can understand that a little bit more. And it makes it more forgiving of why she would be so interested in her wrestling show. Yeah, that stuff was all fun part of the process of growth.
Well, that's all I've got time for, but thank you so much and good luck with the release.
Hey, thank you very much, Thomas.
Thanks, Thomas.
Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey,